Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. It's a chilly morning here. I mean, it definitely feels like fall this morning. In fact, I almost hate to admit it, but I got the heat going on in here this morning. It's still kind of early. Sun hasn't quite popped up yet. And yes, I'm driving down a little single lane gravel road doing about 15, 17 miles an hour. So for all those people that are terribly worried about me not wearing seatbelts on this particular road, it's okay. It's just a little single lane gravel road that you can't even hardly go more than a 20, 25 miles an hour because it's so rough. It's okay. But hey, with the heat, it's coming back. They're saying here in another week or so we'll get some more. I'm telling you, it's not quite fall yet. Don't get your hopes up for those of you that live in the region that I live in. Well, it's happening again. Let me be correct here. It's not happening again. It's been happening nonstop. It's that it's becoming more profound and more noticeable. Okay. Have to remember that sometimes when we see things in the news or being shared online, it's not that that's the first time that it's happened. It's just becoming such an obvious deal that people are really taking notice, and it's no longer just the conspiracy theorists talking about it. And I'm speaking of the illegal immigration, the illegal invasion of this country. You know, it's been a hot topic about the Aurora, Colorado. You know, did it happen? Does it? Is it not? All this kind of stuff. You know, the government there seems to be trying to downplay it a lot. Well, now the internet is claiming that it's the same situation is happening in several other cities. And this time there's at least a 911 call recording of it in Chicago, where 30-some or so Venezuelans were reportedly taking over or attempting to harass and have a show of force at a local apartment complex. Police were sent out. Claim was that they were riding motorcycles around the apartment complex. They had guns, all this kind of stuff. There's also some reports of similar activities going on in Dallas. Now, I'm sure that there's things going on elsewhere because, and I say this knowingly because I've been receiving emails from a lot of you, and if you want to send me emails about it, that's fine. I may not necessarily respond to all of your emails. Like if it's just a news bulletin or an intel that, you know, I may not necessarily respond. I get so many, but you're welcome to please send me emails of information and intel you have. But many of you have reporting on what you're seeing in your locale. And it may not always be this Venezuelan takeover. A lot of times it's just, you know, we're seeing a lot more, you know, non-English speaking, Hispanic looking. They appear to be, you know, at least immigrants and very possibly illegals congregating in certain areas, or, you know, many of them moving into apartment complexes or all this kind of stuff. It's not always necessarily nefarious gang activity. It's just that people are starting to notice more and more the people that are not from here, right? And, you know, there's a couple of reasons I think that's happening. Number one, they just keep pouring across the border. You know, they're saying that there's another big migrant caravan that's expected to hit the border sometime next month, of them flooding across it. And then it's not just that they keep coming across, but as time goes on, the ones that are here are dispersing themselves more, whether they're being dispersed by government authorities or they're doing it on their own. You know, they come across, the big bulk of them are in Texas along the border, and then they just start moving, right? And so we're starting to see more and more of it happen all over. And I know there's been a lot of focus on Venezuela, but it rightfully so. Venezuela, number one, is one of the number one countries where we get the most illegals coming from. And then Venezuela, you know, they had their collapse, their currency collapse, hyperinflated, all the stuff, you know, back almost 10 years ago now. And they're still under a communist rule, as you all know. But they're trying to fix the situation down there. And one of the ways that they're fixing it is that there's a lot of reports that they're, releasing people from prison and encouraging them to go north. I think it was yesterday or the day before, there was a news report out of Mexico that Mexican government authorities are now offering free bus rides, driving by a bunch of cows, and the calves, they're going crazy. They're kind of running around being silly. It's kind of always fun to watch the calves do that. Anyways, Mexican authorities are offering free bus rides from their southern border to the northern border with the United States. So you get into Mexico, you don't have to walk across that country, which we know that they haven't been anyways. But they're now officially, publicly announcing that we're going to give you a bus ride to the north. So there's solid evidence. This is not theoretical evidence. This is solid evidence that multiple countries, and I believe our own, is all part of this plan to send basically the world's worst to the United States. I've made this comment before, and this was back in, the video I think was back in like 2018 or something, but it was one of these princes or something from the Middle East. I think it was the UAE, maybe. I'm not exactly sure on the country, but anyways, he was one of their top, dignitaries of that country. And he's sitting there and he speaks English very well. You can tell he's extremely educated and wealthy and everything. And he says, you Westerners, you Europeans, and you Americans, you think that you're being politically correct and stuff by, accepting all of these people from other countries in migration. He says, what you don't realize is you're taking in the worst of our people. He says, you're taking in the worst of these nations. The people that we don't want, you're taking in. And that's the truth, It's not that, the very, very best of these of these nations are starting to come to the United States. It's the worst of them. It's criminals and stuff. I said a couple weeks ago, it ruffled some feathers, that El Salvador was one of those countries. And everyone's like, oh no, El Salvador's got a great conservative libertarian president. Look at the numbers. El Salvador is the second or third highest country where we get migrants, illegals from, and it's also the second or third highest country of criminal elements coming across the border. And so, there's definitely a lot of evidence showing that, they're sending their criminals up here. Maybe not the government is sending out some edict, but definitely these criminal elements are coming here. Now, how does that relate to you and I? Well, number one, it means that we are starting to see this firsthand. And many of you will see, either you have already seen it and dealt with it, or you will soon. You can't just expect this to only happen in these very blue sanctuary cities, because it's going to be spilling out into more and more places, suburb areas. The numbers just, it's almost a must, because when you look at the tens of millions that's come across the border, they're eventually going to spread out everywhere. You need to be ready for this. Self-defense, I think, would be justified, but you're going to have to be careful and hear what I'm saying. This is such a political hotbed issue that unless you absolutely know that you are really strongly believe that your life is directly in danger, you better be careful, because I have a feeling that most of the court system is not going to necessarily be on your side. They're going to take the side of the victim migrants, because it's the politically correct thing to do. Does that mean that you roll over and do nothing and let them stomp all over you? Of course not. There are other ways to take matters into your hands as an individual and as a group of people than to just immediately go to violence. You should have that as an option. right? You should have the tools. Hear my words. I already got a video. I got notified this morning that YouTube deleted one of my videos again. So I'm being cautious this morning. Use the tools necessary. Make sure you have those tools and a lot of the tools on hand. But you also, really the best thing is that you have a community that sticks together, a community that's healthy. You know, look at these apartment complexes. I mean, in theory, they are communities in themselves. Now, we all know that most of these apartment complexes in big cities, no one cares about each other, no one knows each other and all that. But let's pretend for a moment that these apartment complexes were strong, healthy communities where people pulled together, where everyone helped each other, where it was like a big family kind of thing, you know, like Mayberry or Little House on the Prairie, but just in an apartment complex. Do you really think that these gangs would have been able to move in and do what they've done? Of course not, because the people would immediately come together and kept it from happening, and they would have moved on. These illegal gangs and everything, they're no different than any other criminal element. They're looking for the weak to prey on. And if your neighborhood and your community is weak, then they will prey on it. And so that's why we have to pull together. That's why you need to be having conversations with your neighbors, especially if you live in an area that you think might be a target. You know, if you live in a city or anything like that, you need to be having conversations with neighbors and coming up with plans. Now, if that just isn't going to work at all and you're on your own, then you better have a good solid plan and you better make your move fast, because this is not a situation that you want to probably hunker down. This is going to be one of those situations that bugging out is maybe one of your only options. You know, after watching some of these videos and hearing reports, you know, they're going through and tearing doors down of apartments and houses and stuff. So hunkering down is probably not the option for this one. But whatever it is that your plan is, you need to make sure it's solid. You need to have an escape route, multiple escape routes, you know, contingencies, redundancies. And again, you need to have the tools to protect yourself and your family as you're putting your plan into action. This is serious times, folks. These folks are spreading around. It's everywhere. Yes, there's these few cities that in the last few days have really gotten under the spotlight, but they're all over the place. I cannot tell you how many people email me talking about what they're seeing in their area, and most of these emails that I'm getting from you folks, we're not talking about, oh, I live in St. Louis, I live in New York. No, I live in, you know, a town of 10,000 people in the middle of nowhere, South Carolina or Florida or, you know, Kansas or, you know, something like that. It's these places no one's ever heard of that they're just pouring into. It's time to get your houses in order, folks. This is serious. It's happening. It's real time. It's not something that might happen. We're not talking about maybe Russia's going to nuke someone or maybe Iran's going to invade Israel. No, we're talking real time. It's happening as we speak. You need to be getting yourselves prepared for this, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.